Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 2022 Annual General Meeting of England Hockey. Given the really positive level of attendance at the previous two electronic AGMs, it is felt that continuing to run the meetings virtually is appropriate. Before moving into the agenda for the evening, I would like to introduce the panel members and also highlight some housekeeping points. My name is Mike Stoddard, and I'm the President of England Hockey. Other panel members include Royston Hogarth, Chairman, Nick Pink, Chief Executive, Rich Beer, Development Director, Kuldeep Kaur, Finance Director, and our driver for this evening, Graham Royal, IT Manager. A few housekeeping points. All delegates have entered the meeting on mute. As noted in the calling notice, questions have been invited in advance of the meeting. Where relevant, answers have been included in the presentations to be given by various panel members later in the meeting. Questions during the meeting will be received verbally. Delegates wishing to ask a question should, via the webinar app, raise their hand. Graham will then unmute the delegate for the question to be asked. When a question is being asked, answered, please lower your hand until the question has been completed. Voting during the meeting will be held electronically. Affiliated member organisation's chair or alternative authorised officer will receive an email from agm@englandhockey.co.uk, including a link giving access to the voting form. This should be received in the next 10 minutes. Please check your inboxes, and if you haven't received it, please check your spam folder. If you still haven't received it by 8 p.m, please email agm@englandhockey.co.uk detailing your organisation and name. The voting form requires details of your organisation to be completed before moving on to the section where your votes can be cast. Votes can be cast at any time during the meeting, and the form will remain open until 9 p.m. In respect of the approval sought and resolutions to be put to a vote, it would be helpful if delegates could raise their hands when I ask for a proposer and seconder to put the matter to a vote. Please raise your hand, and when instructed, unmute yourself and propose or second the agenda item in question. All votes will be counted and verified by England Hockey, overseen by myself as President. Once confirmed, results will be published on Wednesday, the 16th of March. These will be emailed directly to all attendees and member organisations' chairs. They will also be uploaded to the England Hockey website, where no doubt they'll be posted in some unforeseen place never to be looked at ever again. Moving into the agenda, item 1 is to receive apologies for absence. We have received a few, and as customary, details of those members who have given apologies for absence will be included in the minutes of the meeting. Item 2 is to approve the minutes of the annual general meeting held on the 16th of March 2021. Does anybody have any questions, comments, gripes, grumbles or misquotes at this moment? In that case, I declare them a true and accurate record of that meeting. Item 3 is to receive the Director's report and approve the financial statements and Auditor's report. At this point, I would like to hand over to Royston and Nick, who will comment around the Director's report, and also Kuldeep, who will take us through the finances.
Thank you, Mike, and let me also express my welcome to everybody for joining us this evening. Really great to have you with us, and I hope we're able to have a really good discussion through the meeting and maybe at the back end with some questions. In terms of what I thought I would do this evening is just reflect on a few of the things from the last year, take those things up front, but also then look ahead to the next sort of 12 months that we have in front of us as sport. And it's been a challenging time, as I think many of you will be aware. If I just start with what I think would be a very positive thing, though, is I'd just like to reflect on the Tokyo and Tokyo, what became Tokyo 21. For the first time ever in our history of the sport, for the third time we medalled, which is absolutely fantastic. So I'd like to start by offering my congratulations to obviously Nick here, Ed, our performance director, Mark, but also Holly and all her team and the team behind the team, for securing another medal in Tokyo this year. I know also, for those of you who didn't get too close to the detail, the challenges they had in terms of living in a bubble. I'm very fortunate to spend quite a lot of time in Tokyo through the year. They weren't able to really be in Tokyo at all and sort of blocked away in a sort of rarefied world, but all credit to them. I'd also like to touch on the men's team. For those of you who tracked it, they were, I think, incredibly unlucky. Apart from a very brief moment against the Indians where we, conceded 2 goals. On the whole, I actually thought, we were much, much stronger than we have been for a long time. And I guess for both teams, given the number of people that will be stepping away from the squads between now and 2024 in Paris, we seem to be in a very, very strong place. And talking to Nick and Ed, I'm hugely confident that we'll go into Paris, with huge confidence. I was reflecting on the papers this morning. Those of you who read the papers this morning, it's 2 years tomorrow since Boris Johnson, our Prime Minister, obviously now, basically asked us all to go into lockdown. And what a 2 years we've all had. The good news, of course, we're emerging. COVID, of course, has disappeared from our screens over the last few weeks for other terrible reasons. But I guess I also wanted just to reflect with all the clubs and everybody, a huge thank you for us for everything you did to support us with the protocols. It's an environment none of us could have expected 2 years ago and even a year ago, and how it would evolve with Omicron and everything else. Something many of you not aware, Nick and I, Rich and the team, very aware, hockey is held in huge esteem by our primary funders, UK Sport and Sport England, as the way that actually team sport should have managed pandemic. Again, without all of you in the clubs and the way that you got behind those initiatives, a huge, great big thank you. But we were certainly held up as the leading sport. And for those of you who were observant, apart from sort of Premiership soccer, which is I guess, professional soccer is a bit of a law unto itself, we were the leading team sport getting back on the pitches, which obviously we're delighted about. A couple of bumpy things I'd just like to pick up. GMS, our game management system. I know Nick and Nick will potentially cover in more detail, but I also wanted to assure all our members this has had the very highest levels of oversight from the board. It may surprise some of you to know that there are 2 of us on the board who are deeply technical and have spent all our lives working in technical IT projects, yet we still went through a very painful transition over the last 6 months. The key thing for me is, outside of putting our hands up and saying we're very aware, and many clubs raised it with me as I journeyed around the clubs, how disappointed, how frustrated they were with how the programme had run. And we take that on the chin, and obviously it wasn't what we intended. The really important thing, as you would expect us to do, we've done a very detailed independent review of where the programme is at this stage. And the good news from our perspective is we see the opportunity that GMS brings. We're confident we've got a good platform, and obviously we'll be managing that really tightly going forward. But I did not want to just touch on it here in my opening remarks. I'd like to sort of move on to all other things that have changed in the last year as well. We have the new area ASC. Again, I'd like to thank all of the people that have put so much work in over the last 12 months to implement the new ASCs, the new directors, Claire, who now joins us on the board as an observer. A huge amount of work. If you're not close to the detail, now is not the time to get into all the things that have evolved and all the ways all the volunteers have supported us. But fantastic achievement over the last 12 months, led by our president, Mike, and obviously Chris and Dawn as vice presidents and everybody else. It's also, though, I'd also like to just reflect on, the RCC, the HUA, the counties, and everything they've done over the last over 100 years to govern our sport and run our sport. So today is also an opportunity for me to formally thank them, and also Neville Wrench, who Neville for the last several years has sat on the board as an observer from the RCC and has worked very closely with me. And not joking aside, he wasn't there all 100 years, but Neville, you were always great fun and a really superb person to work with. So thank you for your support during that time. And I guess the final sort of thorny subject for me, which has been very much on my radar over the last few weeks. Many of you are aware that we've got a pro league model that we actually run and trying to actually build our international sport on. This is something driven by the FIH, our international body, For it, Nick and I, and the rest of the team, this isn't what we intended the way it's operating at the moment, primarily driven on the back of where pandemic has taken us. The whole concept of Pro League, to remind a few people, was to work with the broadcasters to create a product that in time would be something that could create a potential top-down funding model. What it isn't supposed to be doing is something that creates tremendous friction and contention with some of our National League clubs. And again, for the National League clubs that are joining us this evening, I and the board want to reiterate to you, as Nick and the team will have done, we're fundamentally pushing very hard with our European presence. So I'm very close to the Dutch, the Belgians, the Germans, the Spanish, as is Nick at CEO level. We're all hugely frustrated with where this program of international hockey has got us to at the moment. And we will sit down with you and fellow clubs in the next weeks and months to make sure we minimise the disruption. The key message I want to give is the board are very keen to support, obviously, club hockey at national level, but also support you as teams as you go onto the international platform going forward. And that's something we're working with all of those bodies on. So I wanted to touch on that, and Nick, forgive me if I belaboured that point a little bit, but I wanted to make sure the clubs are aware. Two other little things I just touch on, which are just interesting things for members to be aware of. One of the things I think is really, really a big focus for us as a board, but also for you, is safety in our sport. Quite a few of the other major national sports are being challenged in terms of how safety works. We as a sport, you will hear have signed up with a company called Podium Analytics, which is chief executive, which happens to be one of our board members, Andy Hunt. And they are looking at how safety in our sport can be improved, looking at injuries in effectively the youth end of the market between 10 and 18, and looking at how we can learn from that to improve and reduce systematic injuries in our sport, particularly looking at people playing later in their careers. This is not a short-term thing, but it's something we fundamentally believe in will make a huge difference in the long term. And for those of us who still aspire to play Masters hockey, I'm sure you'll all agree with me, if we'd only had some of the benefits of some of those learnings in years gone by, we'd still be even more sprightly than we are. And my final thing, again, one would never expect to discuss these things at a hockey AGM, but I also just wanted to let you know that across Europe, Nick and I are talking with our European cousins as such around obviously the horrors of things that happen in Ukraine. Many of you won't be aware that Ukraine is a very fast-growing hockey nation. And we've extended our support along with the rest of the European hockey federations to try and help them. The lady that actually runs the European hockey, runs Ukraine hockey has fled the country, and the teams have moved on and everything else. But we'll keep involved with those things. And obviously we're keen as a fellow European country to support them as much as possible. I'm just going to briefly look to the future. Don't want to take too long. I want everybody to be aware we're working really hard on evolving our strategy. We don't expect significant shifts, as you would expect, otherwise we'd be doing something dramatically wrong in the past. But the key themes I just wanted to just re-emphasize for everybody, just to make sure people knew where we were coming from. We do want to continue to follow the success the ladies have had and build on the men's success obviously from Olympics and a global tournament perspective. The second point I made earlier, we do, and I want to see us work much more closely with the clubs. Rich and the team do a great job, but we'll be looking at how we evolve that to create the minimum disruption, but also the best opportunities for everyone. There's a lot of work going on performance and talent centres. I'm sure that might come up later, but we're looking forward to seeing the clubs work with the ASC and the particular areas to actually bring that to bear. And the final thing I just wanted to touch on in terms of the sort of strategy aspects is ED&I. It's a subject which has been getting a lot of attention in the media and everything else in all aspects of our lives. And in hockey, the way we're looking at it very much not as a gender, ethnicity and anything else, but very much as a how do we get everybody having an access and opportunity to play our sport. And there'll be papers coming out, and I'll let Nick and Kuldeep and the team share much more on that. But absolutely delighted the work that we're doing currently. I've seen and witnessed on an EDI perspective. We've got an advisory group, which you'll see some fantastic people working with us on that. There's some great outputs. But the critical thing is it's all about how do we get more access for more people to play our sport, and making sure we support you, our clubs, in actually getting as many of our people representing our communities as possible. Much more on that as we go. I'm really happy to get into some detail on that. My final couple of things, just some advertorials from me, just so you're all aware. I'm sure many of you have already volunteered to, part of our wonderful hockey family thing to support the Commonwealths in Birmingham in a few months' time. So they'll be upon us very soon. Again, we're very close to the organising committee and what's going on. The games will be held in hockey, as you're probably already aware, at Birmingham University. So we're excited about that. I'm sure many of you have got tickets. We've got the World Championships, both men's and women's this year. The ladies playing in July in Spain and the Netherlands, and the boys will be playing later in the year in India. We've got a Junior World Cup for ladies in South Africa next month. The boys, as some of you will be aware, we pulled out in India for health reasons. And I guess on behalf of the board and the whole of you, I'd just like to wish those teams every success. And it's just great to be back on the pitch. I think, one of the things we're reflecting as a board is, I'd like to think next year is a year of consolidation. And actually, it'll just be fantastic to be out playing and watching hockey again. And my last advertorial on that is we've got some Pro League games coming up. And I would particularly like to point you to the games we've got in early June, which will be played at the Stoop again at Twickenham against the Netherlands, both men's and women's. There'll be double headers. So those of you who haven't seen that would love to see you there. And certainly most of us as the board will be there, and an opportunity for us to get back together again. Closing, Nick, I'm nearly there. I just want to say some other quick thank yous to three very special people that have recently stepped away from England hockey. Firstly, and not least, Danny Kerry. Danny, I'm not sure Danny will be with us tonight, but recently stood down as head of as our men's coach. Over 17 years with England hockey, most successful of all of our coaches ever, working when I started as PD, and then obviously worked both in the women's and the men's section. I want to personally thank him for his support, advice, success and friendship. We wish him every success for the future, and we look forward to thanking him properly with all of our colleagues, friends and clubs at a point in the future. Mark Hagan. Mark was the ladies coach. Mark has stood down, many of you will be aware. Mark's an Australian, I think living in New Zealand, so I know he's somewhere down there. Mark and I and Nick, and we had a very good send-off from Mark, but again, big thank you for Mark for everything and supporting our ladies as they got bronze medal in Tokyo. And last and definitely not least, I'm not sure he's with us tonight, but Andy Halliday. I was reflecting on what to say about Andy, and I haven't met anybody in hockey who actually doesn't know him, which is quite remarkable as an individual. And have some warm and amusing story about Andy, about their time with him, whether working with heroes, dribbling balls up mountains or whatever it happens to be. But he's been a core part of our management and delivery of the performance programme over the last years. I was delighted to catch up with him, as I'm sure many of you others were, at the Super Sixes in January. Tremendous guy, and obviously we wish him, Mark and Danny, all the very best and look forward to saying thank you properly. On that, I'd like to close. I'd like to thank my colleagues, vice presidents, presidents and board members for all their hard work over the last year. And on that note, Nick, over to you.
Great, thank you, Royston, and thank you very much for pretty much saying everything I was going to say, I think, so that's great. But no, in all seriousness, thank you very much for that introduction, and good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all. We really do appreciate you joining us this evening, and it is really good to see so many of you again at the AGM. The engagement, as both Royston and Mike have already said, the engagement with hockey clubs, hockey club members is vitally important, and clearly virtual AGMs are the way to go, enabling us to reach more people from across the country. So really, really positive, and thanks again. It is incredible, as Royston was just alluding to at the start, to think that this time last year I was talking to you about getting hockey back on at the end of March after the lockdown we had all experienced. And in the last 12 months, we've certainly not sat still as a sport, as you've already started to hear. As we look back on this year, this evening, it's so good to be talking to you with a full season almost under our belts. Having dusted off the stick and shin pads myself again, I've seen firsthand just how much hard work, resilience, commitment you all play. And for all those volunteers, coaches and umpires and many more up and down the country, it speaks volumes for our sport. And we are incredibly grateful for all your commitments. So thank you. I'm also aware of the time and energy that was needed in the last couple of years to keep the game on, adapting to the changing systems and all the environments around us. So please do look after yourselves and each other, and use the months ahead of us as we do come to a close to recharge and re-energize ahead of the next season. It's going to be really important we do get there. Equally, there's a sense, I feel, of sort of uniting together, rebuilding and putting our great sport in the very best possible position going forward. We've all ambitiously gone on a journey of modernisation and togetherness in the last 12 months. And there are several ways that can be seen. Firstly, 12 months ago with the AGM resolution changes being passed and pushed through, have seen this season delivered through a new network, as Royston was saying, of areas and sub-areas with new rules, new regulations, new leagues, new structures. And it will certainly take another year or two for all of these changes to feel fully embedded. And I know at a local level how this has affected clubs, mainly positively, but with some challenges too, which will be ironed out in due course and with time. What we've all achieved is significant. It really is. And I'm very grateful to all those, as Royston was talking to, in making these changes come alive. Secondly, we've also been looking at the talent system and the talent system changes, which have begun after much consultation and discussion. I wholeheartedly support what we are all doing here and moving to a system where we have talent centres, 37 already in the first year, and talent academies in clubs and universities around the country. And giving the right athlete the right environment is incredibly important. We also know that potential in athletes comes through at different times. We've all seen this at different points. And ensuring this is embedded into the community of clubs and universities that are intrinsic to every community in the country is vital. It will take time. However, there is no doubt in my mind that this will place hockey in England in the strongest place going forward. We all need to move forward, unite behind our joint vision and start to see the benefits. At the heart of the talent system changes is equality, diversity and inclusion. To reach potential for more young people, and particularly ethnic and culturally diverse young people, is absolutely fundamental. We see around 6 to 8% of those involved in the talent pathway from ethnic and culturally diverse populations, and we must increase this. This ambition fits and sits firmly at the heart of the new ED&I framework that will be published shortly. The third piece I wanted to talk to, and Royston touched on this already, is equality, diversity and inclusion. The new-ish, and I do say ish because they've been set up now for a few months, the ED&I advisory group presented the ED&I framework at the latest Change Starts Together conference, which we hosted just at the end of February. The background to the framework is obviously connected to the conversations in wider society that we've all seen in recent times. The last few years have provided most people with a really clear understanding of the disparities that different people face on a day-to-day basis, and has challenged many of us to think about whether we have unintentionally created environments that do not include people or make assumptions about access of opportunity. The game, and this game of hockey, has many positives to be rightly proud of, and yet we all know there is room to improve. This is about considering where and how we can be better and reach more of the population. And the framework is that blueprint for change, because we are really committed to making sure that we reach more people from more diverse communities. At the last conference, we presented the 4 lead outcomes. Those are to reflect society and ensure hockey remains relevant in the 21st century, to ensure safe, respectful, inclusive cultures, valuing and welcoming everyone, to create access for anyone from any background to participate in hockey, and the 4th, ensuring the reputation of hockey is regarded as excellent in its commitment to equality, diversity and inclusion. The actions and measures that sit around these 4 outcomes cut right across everything we do at England Hockey and will be doing going forward. We will hold ourselves accountable through you, the membership, and through our funded bodies, UK Sport and Sport England. Equally, we know that media and other partners are looking at hockey and all sports to step in and take greater responsibility. This also rings true for every club and university in the country, so we all need to take that responsibility, and we'll make sure that we provide support to make sure we can all share and all learn as we go forward on this journey together. There is one area that I did want to just focus in on a second, just in relation to equality, diversity, inclusion, which keeps coming up through the surveys and via posts on Twitter, is the balance between state and privately educated hockey players. This issue does understandably create tension at a local and national level, and there is no doubt that the private system has created more opportunities for children and young people in the last 10 years. Those talent changes I just referenced aim to improve the quality of provision, and we believe that embedding this system in the structure, the club structure and university structure, is completely the right way to go. We're also working at a national level with government, with organisations like the Youth Sport Trust and other national bodies to improve the provision of physical education and school sport in all schools. Sadly, that's not in my remit or Royston's directly. I wish it was sometimes, but we know as a country we're not where we need to be. And I really hope that we have a coordinated national PE and school sport strategy that will support hockey and put hockey in the future of all schools going forward. The other area I just wanted to touch on, the fourth area specifically, and Royston, you talked very eloquently to this around the game management system. So I won't say too much here, but as Royston said, we entered the new season in 21 leading into 22 with the aspiration of a fully functioning game management system. We know it has not delivered yet, and I know it has been painful, as Royston rightly pointed out. We did have problems with the system early on, and just before Christmas, we asked for an independent review of the system. We're working through this review at the moment, and we will share its outcomes. Rich Beer will talk to this in a bit more detail shortly. Once we've got the system to where we need to in the short term, we'll be taking a pause to make sure that we take the learnings from those next steps and improve the experience for everyone in the game. We know we need to get this next phase right and build on where we've got to, and please be assured that we're taking all the necessary steps that we know we need to make sure that those improvements are there. And thanks, as Royston rightly pointed out, to everybody for your patience in what was undoubtedly quite a frustrating and disappointing period at the beginning. I'm going to just move to the sort of financial side of things, and Kuldeep, I promise not to take too much away from what you're about to say, but and Kuldeep will talk in more detail to this. Our grant funding from UK Sport and Sport England continues to make up the greatest proportion of our income at around 70%. Our commercial and event income, you won't be surprised, has been heavily reduced through COVID with little to no international hockey, and when we have played, it has been behind closed doors at a cost. However, I did want to focus in on the membership fees from hockey clubs that have enabled us to provide core services to the sport that are not funded from our grant income. This includes governance, health and safety that Royston talked to, safeguarding, which continues to be important areas for the sport. The demands that we're seeing from government and through public policy continue to increase in these areas, and alongside our own improvements to areas such as our disciplinary procedures, these are areas we continue want to improve and continue to want to lead on. So we are immensely grateful to the support of the membership and enabling us to continue to provide vital and important services in these areas. The membership fees really do enable us to carry out that core and important role, so thank you. Internationally, the last 12 months have been some year. COVID has obviously dominated, and we saw some strong performances at the Olympic Games. The bronze medal for the women was fantastic, and now under David Ralph, we're excited by the future and the trajectory of the team. The same with the men's group, who had a really competitive Olympic Games, coming 5th and are showing some really good, strong signs going forward. We also said goodbye to a number of players. Royston has mentioned the immense contributions rightly of Danny Kerry, Andy Halliday and Mark Hager, but in the last 6 months we've said goodbye to a number of players who've either stepped away or retired from the international game. There have been some incredible contributions over the last decade, and our appreciation and thanks go to Susanna Townsend, Nick White, Sarah Evans, Emily de Freund, in addition to Adam Dixon, George Pinner, Harry Gibson, Ashley Jackson, Henry Weir, Ollie Willars and Luke Taylor, names that will continue to play an important part in the future of the game, as well as what they've contributed over the last 10 years, so thank you. This year, the FIH Hockey Pro League, as Royston pointed out, has started in February. We had the men against Spain in early February and men and women in Argentina. We have a number of exciting new players joining the setup, and they showed some really strong performances in the last month against some tough opposition. We move forward with trips to India, USA and Germany in April and May, and we move to hosting home matches at Lee Valley in May and June, and the Stoop will be taking on the Netherlands on the 4th and 5th of June. We hope to see many of you at those games. Interest in tickets has been high, so please do get in there soon to avoid any disappointment. We go on general sale in the next few days, so please look out for the Hockey Family window and that discount code, all important discount code, and please, we look forward to seeing you at those games in the coming weeks. As Royston touched on, the international schedule continues this summer as we have the Women's World Cup in Spain and Netherlands in July, the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham 22, and the European qualifier in Durham at the end of August. It is a busy and exciting few months, with Masters Hockey also taking place in the same month of August, And we can't wait to see hockey fans back in stadiums supporting international teams at every level. Just briefly, the Commonwealth Games that I just referenced also provides us with a really unique opportunity for the sport, for hockey, and we'll be announcing our programme of activity around what we'll be doing shortly. So please do look out for that in due course. As I move to closing, I want to come back to the domestic game and a couple of the points that Royston finished on. This continues to be important to us all. Royston rightly raised this. Recent communications have really demonstrated a need to bring people back together, and we'll be starting with the Premier League clubs next week. However, we have a commitment to improve our communications and connection to you all. Partly frustration with the game management system, not enabling us to get to a place quick enough, but we also recognise the need to communicate more about the core of the sport. We'll look to do more to support members of England Hockey. All the changes I've mentioned actually, and a lot of the changes Royston and Mike have talked to the future of the sport and the support that we provide. One thing that we have introduced in the last 12 months that I just wanted to sort of close on is the new insurance partner in Bluefin Sport. To improve the cover across the sport, but secondly, to reduce the cost where possible of insurance in the sport. Bluefin have helped us to remain competitive and improve what we have and make sure there is a consistent level of cover, insurance cover across the sport. Over 75% of hockey clubs have taken this offer out through Membership Plus, and I'm certain it's provided great reassurance across the network of what provision needs to be put in place. Please do make sure you reach those minimum levels as laid out in the conditions of membership that we set out last year. So just to close, a thank you to you all. This year has seen much change, not only in the environment around us, but also in the environment we're here to look after and evolve. We are making huge commitments to the future of hockey. We're all placing great effort and time to make the sport better for future generations. On behalf of England Hockey, we're immensely grateful to you all for all your continued and combined efforts. So thank you very much indeed. And Colby, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's really great to be with you this evening. Before I get into the money, I just wanted to echo some of the ED&I work that's been going on. The framework has come about from an enormous amount of engagement with the game, and we've definitely been in a listening mode. That's really something. Firstly, I want to say thank you for sharing your contributions and sharing your insights in the development of that framework, but also to assure you that listening will be a theme that will continue through the duration of our work in the future. So please do continue to engage with us in all the different ways that will become available, and we can only improve with that feedback. Moving on to the finances, on screen you'll see some visuals used in the annual report this year. These may be a little difficult for everyone to read, but they are available on the website and they show our key income and expenditure items. To share some of the highlights from the year, in the financial year to the 31st of August 2021, England Hockey incurred a net deficit of 20k and reserves remained stable at 1.17 million. The percentage of total income from UK Sport and Sport England did rise from 65% to 68%. The turnover of the organisation increased by 8%. This was due to one-off increases in grant funding. But it's important for me to really emphasise that the commercial and events revenues remain significantly affected by the COVID pandemic. The pandemic disrupted the recently formed FIH Hockey Pro League, which was not able to run with spectators in England in both 2020 and 2021. This resulted in revenue being impacted, but also a proportion of direct costs were incurred by England Hockey. This has had a knock-on impact on the reinvestment into hockey and the sport itself. The forward outlook for the Pro League games remains impacted, and there are difficulties in the Southern Hemisphere nations' ability to fulfil fixtures. On the plus side, on memberships, despite the window for memberships being later on in the year, we were able to meet our membership revenue targets, and we are incredibly grateful to the membership for the support that you've offered in this period. I also wanted to highlight that as part of this year's audit, There was extensive going concern analysis by the auditors in advance of audit committee approval. So once again, we saw considerable analysis before those approvals took place. We'll now move on to any questions.
So does anybody have any questions for Nick or Royston or indeed Kuldeep? If so, please raise your hand.
Okay, we've a question from Mark Ling. Mark, I've unmuted you, so if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Any, Graham?
No, no, Mark's still self-mute.
How about that? Can you hear me now?
That's it.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah, just a question about, obviously very difficult to get commercial sponsorship over the last couple of years for obvious reasons. But what do you think the outlook looks like now for 22 and 23 and beyond from a commercial sponsorship perspective?
Thanks, Mark. Mike, I'm happy to pick that one up. It's a really good question, and I'm speaking to quite a few other sports at the moment, Mark, in relation to getting a sense of what they're starting to see. The professional sports have started to see an early return because there's been more visibility of the sports, primarily through broadcast and other reasons. But for other sports like ours and our size of sports, it continues to be a real challenge, being really honest with you. So I can see us spending the next 12 months sort of repositioning the game, putting international hockey back on, getting more visibility through not just through BT Sport, by having fans back in stadia, and starting to sort of build that up again to rebuild confidence in the product that we have, the fantastic product of hockey. And it is interesting, there is definitely more conversation, discussion starting to happen, but I wouldn't want to misrepresent anything, Mark, to you now by over promising anything in the next 12 months, because I don't think it's going to be easy. I think we're going to have to work really hard to cultivate, particularly at the sponsorship level, sponsors that look at, sort of medium to long-term relationships with us. We've started to see a few smaller relationships come through, and we'll be announcing those in the next couple of weeks. But those are, as much smaller than anything would have seen at the national level.
Okay,
Mike,
thanks.
Royston, you got a comment?
Yeah, Mark, I was just going to say, only to echo Nick's point, but also, Mark, one of the things I'm really aware of as a community, we don't leverage the hockey family community enough. So I don't know you well, I don't know you, Mark, but you may be sitting running a really interesting company that's looking for some exciting sponsorship opportunities. So what I'd say to the whole club community is, those of you who've got interesting ideas or other things around sponsorship, don't sit on them. Obviously, I'm sure you're leveraging them for your own individual clubs, but I'm talking like Nick to several really great hockey folks, and trying to see if we can open up some new dialogues based, as Nick said, on getting our product back on the pitch and so on. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I just add a comment that the days of flogging shirt sponsorship with your name on the shirt are over. We have to present a value proposition to any potential sponsor with things like ED&I and all the other things that go around just actually playing hockey. So it's a difficult world to be in at the moment. Graham, any further? Any more questions?
Yep, we have a question from Joshua Kidman. I've unmuted you, so if you want to unmute.
Hi, so I just wanted to speak to you guys about the gaming system. From what I've experienced, obviously the gaming system has been quite hard for certain teams on like lower levels. But obviously there's also other teams which are being put to high levels, which are on the wrong levels. So I was wanting to see how you guys are going to focus more on that kind of section.
Rich, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, Joshua, can I just clarify the question? It felt like it was in two parts. So it was one about getting teams at the right level in the leagues. Can I just clarify that?
Yeah, so basically my team that I play for, our Regations Hockey Club, obviously we were put in a league that we should basically put in, because we've obviously struggled quite hard this level on the league that we're in at the moment. So I'm just wondering, for next season, obviously, is it going to be back to normal where we would be right in putting the correct levels and to what we can play in?
I think that's always a discussion with your league to begin with, and the leagues are keen after 1 year of aligning people to the right level of trying to ensure they've got that right to make any decisions on the back of this first season. And I think for many clubs, COVID has presented very different challenges about where you may have been in the league pre-COVID might be quite different from where you are after COVID. So that's definitely a local league conversation. And as the season comes to an end, they're listening to people who may want to go down further in terms of leagues. Equally, there's a number of teams who want to go up quicker. And that's got to be managed on a case-by-case basis by the leagues.
Okay, then that's fine.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Graham, any?
Okay, no other questions at the moment.
Okay.
Oh, hang on, sorry, one hand just gone up. Amy Franklin, I've unmuted you if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hopefully you can hear me. Amy Franklin here, representing one of the smaller clubs in London Hockey. I wanted to put a question to you to see if you've any collaboration on finding pitches. I know London Hockey struggles massively with finding pitches for the vast number of games that happens. It's something that struck our small club, Mitcham Ladies Hockey Club, quite severely in the last season. So I just, particularly coming from schools, turning clubs away from my experience. So I just wanted to put to this group whether you have any thoughts on that or opportunities to collaborate to help find more pitches. Please and thanks.
Me again, I think. Yeah, I mean, we know where every pitch is and who it's in the ownership of, full-size hockey pitch. We didn't, prior to this season, know who used them because it was so volatile, particularly in London, although GMS gives us a view on that. So we now have a much better idea of which pitches might be over or underused, particularly the weekends, which is I think what you're talking about. So very happy to talk. If you drop a note to either me or the club's team, we can have a look at what insight we've got around what pitches might be available. The reality, I think, is in London, it is highly competitive between clubs, particularly around certain venues, and that we've attempted to collaborate on that, but it's quite hard. We've tried to adjust and make the league regulations more flexible, and I know the London League in particular are trying to be really flexible, supporting people around when they can play to try and encourage the maximum use of pitches. But we're happy to help try and give some advice and even identify some that might be underused if we can from the data we now have.
Great, I'll take that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. A question from Patricia Kite. Patricia, I've unmuted you if you want to unmute and then ask your question.
Hi, it's not so much a question as a statement. I was interested with what the chap from Old Regations was saying, and I really just wanted to say to him to contact the South East League with what they would like to do, and we will listen because I'm one of the people on the South East League. So, so we will. You know, I know that not every team was happy with where they ended up, but it was a particularly difficult mix in the Southeast, and not everybody ended up playing the teams that they would like to play. But we'll try and help out for next year.
Thanks, Mags. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
It was never going to be perfect first time around, but it will, I'm sure, settle down. I'm going to move us on. Actually, there will be opportunities for other questions during AOB, but I would like to just move the agenda on a little. So in the absence of further questions at this stage, can I please ask for a proposer that the financial statements and auditors report be approved? A proposer, please?
Daniel Metcalf.
Thank you, Daniel. And a seconder?
Mark Ling.
Thank you, Mark. I therefore declare that the financial statements and auditors report for the year ended August 2021 are approved. Item 4 is to approve the reappointment of Hayes McIntyre as auditors of the company. A relatively straightforward resolution. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Okay, in that case, could I have a hand up for a proposer, please?
David Whittingham.
Thank you, David. And a seconder?
Deborah Evelyn.
Thank you, Deborah. In this particular, because it's a resolution, there is the opportunity to vote. So if you haven't already voted, please do so now using the electronic form. Okay, I will now move over and hand over to Rich Beer, who will report on some of the development work that's been going on at England.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mike. I think, as always in AGM presentations, everyone in front of you tries to steal your thunder and nick any of the good bits to talk about. So I'll do my best to cover off some things from a development perspective. Needless to say that the headlines have really been around the structure, fit for the future changes, and the frankly enormous amount of work that's gone into that over the last year. I think a couple of the questions have come up, identify really that were once in generational changes that will take some time to bed down. We've had a few questions about progress made so far and still needs to be done. And I can assure you that at the heart of these changes are not only a number of England Hockey staff, but are an incredibly committed group of volunteers from those that sit on the area standing committee that know who they are and know who've spent many a Monday afternoon making sure that we're discussing progress and trying to align what we do across the area, right through to all those on the new committees for leagues, adults, juniors, masters, and all the other things that are running. So we're really grateful for the enormous amount of time, and there's a few people in particular, either as part of those committees or advising on governance things, who put in a huge amount of time to get where we've got to so far. Like any good plan, as a volunteer friend used to say, it doesn't survive full contact with the enemy, and we've had to evolve and develop some things as we go along. But I think if you reflect back on the proposals that were put to the membership, we're still very much in line with what was proposed to the membership at that time, in evolving and building out the detail underneath that. I would stress, as we said to a couple of people here, everyone who's involved from a voluntary perspective in this wants to get it right and wants to make the necessary improvements. And we've heard from Joshua from all the obligations, if you want to feed in your feedback to your areas, we are currently doing things like reviewing the adult league regulations. We'll share those with clubs slightly later in the year, in good time before next season, to ensure that we are taking on board that feedback and we are moving things forward. Linked to the AGM resolution was obviously GMS. I'm not going to sort of repeat what Nick and Royston have said. I'm sure we'll have questions on it as well. What I will talk briefly about is the review that's taken place, just to provide some sort of assurance of what we've done. So with the challenges we faced in the early part of the autumn, particularly in September, October, we quickly decided we needed an in-flight review and decided that around Christmas was the right time to progress that. And what we were really keen to do was get some people who really understood NGBs and the club landscape doing that review. And so we partnered with a guy called Damien Smith, who used to be head of sort of technology and systems at the English Cricket Board, who'd been involved with Play Cricket, and also for sort of extra independent Deloitte, who not at full Deloitte's rate, I'd hasten to add, but a supported rate for us, took part in the GMS review as well. They are currently reviewing rugby unions, GMS systems, as well as one or two other sports. So that review has been conducted by them. The initial thoughts on the review have been shared with a board subgroup, and the exec are finishing off a management response that will go with that review to the full board for consideration along with the next steps. And we'll make the executive summary and really the headlines of that available to the membership, because it's really important that we share what we learn. The summary was, and one thing I think that's been really important to remember through this is we faced a situation in the sport where, with the governance changes that were happening, there were new structures, new leagues, new organisations, but also the current incumbent IT landscape in the sport was changing as well. We obviously, as England Hockey, were using Sport Lomo that was used by a portion of the sport at National League level and cups. But Fixtures Live, probably the other largest incumbent system within the sport, was being turned off. So we found ourselves with the need to make a decision that had risks, and they were risks that the board absolutely discussed along the way. And we faced more challenges than we would have liked along the way, and we have been sort of open with that with anyone who's asked and written clubs to that effect. However, the sort of vision and the commitment to moving towards one system that really does function as we'd like it to, the board, speaking on behalf of the board, is committed to, and the board plans to make the necessary investments over the next months and frankly years to get to really get it to where we need to get it to, and the review covers that. So I'm happy to talk about that a bit more. I don't know whether any colleagues want to add to that or feel that's a fair summary of where we are. I'm just looking at anyone to see if they want to add anything at that stage.
All good.
Royston?
All good.
So more widely in development terms, just a few bits really, highlights to draw out really, and a lot of these relate to sort of recovery from COVID, return to play. Probably as relieved as many of you are from never seeing return to play guidance ever again, I certainly am very relieved at not having to write any return to play guidance, at least not for the foreseeable future. We went through some hugely challenging periods and didn't enjoy having to pass on the various ever-changing government guidance to clubs. But many clubs have come through that showing huge resilience, but also many took opportunities to improve and develop what they do. We know it's been hard for some, and clubs were able, many clubs were able to access support. And it's been hard to re-establish clubs with social environments not functioning properly and some of the restrictions we've had in place. But the sport's done a brilliant job of getting itself back on and playing, and I think credit to all volunteers and clubs for that. You know, we all know we couldn't do it without you. And there are some lovely case studies. We put one on our website last week around Tor Valley Hockey Club, who'd been supported by the COVID fund down there, and a wonderful story about a club, you know, facing huge challenges, really coming back to life after COVID, which is brilliant to see. We obviously got running our championships programs and made sure we had activity running our online coach education and officiating education courses. And I think one of the great things to come out of COVID was we now have over 50 clubs offering flyers, inclusive hockey sessions at their clubs, which I think is a great credit to the sport, and their integrated nature within the club environment, I think is really showing hockey at its best and is a role model for some of the other things that we need to do in terms of inclusion and ED&I as we move forward. We've also been running our Hockey Heroes program that we started soon before COVID, and it's something we have real aspirations to trying to grow and improve. We hope over time it can become a challenger to All Stars cricket that many of you will be familiar with, and that really high quality introduction to people to the sport. A really good experience is going to be really critical if we're going to broaden the number of people who engage in our sport and play. And we'll be pushing Hockey Heroes on the back of the Commonwealth Games, as well as other programs to clubs, and really encouraging people to get involved in those. And the clubs that have really taken to their heart and run with them, you know, it's made a real difference to their club, not least what they do through the Hockey Heroes program, but how it really builds and develops their junior section from the bottom up. And the reality, I think, with state school sport and the challenges it faces, that primary and the Hockey Heroes age group is a huge opportunity for the sport, for us to grow the game. It's the long game. Not going to solve your first team challenges tomorrow, but it's the right game to play in terms of building on our family roots and really allowing people brilliant introductory experiences. I won't go on any more, but a huge amount that we're sort of looking forward to from a development perspective once we've got over governance and structures and terms of reference and regulations of getting back into some of that development work with clubs. And I think everyone knows we have limited resource. We can't do everything at the same time in every direction. But we're really looking forward to sort of building on the back of the Commonwealth Games and into next season and getting back out there and providing more support to clubs. That's me.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Anybody got some more specific development questions for Rich? Graham, anybody?
Yep, Graham Griffiths has a question. Graham, I'll unmute you if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, Graham.
Yep, you're unmuted if you want to go ahead.
Graham, silence is golden. I think it's the first time in my whole life that I've heard you silent. Graham, can I just, if you can hear me, can I then suggest that you we move on and then you ask your question in AOB, where there'll be opportunity to do that. So let's move on to item 5.
Oh, so you've got another couple of questions.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yep.
Okay, Maggie Westby, if I've unmuted you, if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. Well, I wanted to raise the issue of small clubs. We heard a little bit earlier about one of the issues, like pitches and clubhouses and too many players or not enough players and all that, this kind of thing. So my question really is, have you considered having, say, a small clubs officer who would be responsible for promoting, you know, not just the issues about small clubs, but the benefits of small clubs, and especially with respect to, you know, the inclusivity and diversity agenda. You know, there are lots of benefits of small clubs. So,
Rich?
I think it's a really good point, and I think with a long varied culture of different shapes, sizes, and it's why we're not Belgium or Holland in the style of the club structure we have in England. So I think we've always tried to support clubs where they've asked for, from a development team perspective. And I know the RMs would. We'd always encourage people to ask for help. As you said, I think the aim of any club is to position themselves as appealing to particularly to people, and not all clubs can do that in every way. So knowing your strengths and playing to them is what we definitely advise and support clubs. So I think the debate about having an officer, I think, is a really interesting point, and I'll definitely take it and think about it.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more?
Joshua Kidman, if I unmute you, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Welcome back. Welcome back, Joshua.
Thank you very much. You were saying about the development and stuff like that, but could you physically use it against, like, for other players? So if people want to like do umpiring, can they like take that abroad as well and use that against hockey?
It's in themselves to be an international umpire. Is that what you're talking about, or using their umpiring qualification overseas?
So basically, for me, I'm a unassessed level 1 umpire, so I do a lot of umpiring for my club. But obviously, I want to progress upwards. But I was wanting to know what's the best way to develop myself to do it.
Yeah. Okay. So that's helpful. Thanks. So we have a sort of officiating and umpiring development pathway that your area officiating body would help you with if you want to progress. Initially, that would be around getting your level 1 qualification and moving on from there. So I think if you want to drop a line to the AGM email address or put your contact details across to us, I can definitely ask them to with you and talk about how they support you in terms of next steps.
Okay, then that'd be fine. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move us on again, ladies and gentlemen. Item 5 is to approve the resolution to increase the membership fee by 1.5% for the 22-23 season. Free membership for new teams in their first season will continue. Not the most popular of resolutions that we propose. Does anybody have any comments or questions around this particular item?
Yep, Ian Harvey's got his hand up. So Ian, I'll unmute you if you want to unmute yourself.
Ian, ask away.
Thank you. I mean, I think we're all very conscious of what inflation is at the moment, and I think we're also equally aware of the geopolitical situation that we face. Is 1.5% enough? Can you deliver all you've talked about this evening? ED&I, development, improving the IT, all these elements with 1.5% increase? I don't like increases, but realistically, in the current climate, is that sufficient?
Nick, do you want to?
I can pick that up, Ian. Thank you for your question. We did think long and hard about this at the last board meeting and what we wanted to present. We wanted to keep it as low as it could be because we recognise that there's a community of members, hockey clubs that are equally trying to do what they need to do in their area to their membership as well. So we have planned our activity for the year, Ian, based on what we think we can afford and what we can deliver, and therefore that's what we're proposing to the membership today. We'll need to review that as we go on, and we'll need to look at what that might mean in future years, but we don't know at this stage. But that's what we feel comfortable with at this stage, and hence presenting that way. But thank you for your question.
I've just got a message that Graham, you're off mute, and if you want to ask your question now, then carry on, please. No, we seem to, Graham, I don't know whether it's a reception issue, but we can't hear you. Going back then, does anybody have any further questions on the affiliation membership fee issue? Okay, can I then please have a proposer that the membership fee be increased by 1.5% for the 22-23 season?
Malcolm Tucker.
Thanks, Malcolm. And a seconder, please.
Joshua Kidman.
Thanks, Joshua. It's a busy evening for you, isn't it, Joshua? Crikey. So on that basis then, if you haven't already done so, please can you vote electronically? That would be much appreciated. Okay, moving on. Item 6 is to consider any other business. We do request for any other business questions in advance. We haven't received any. However, looking at my clock, according to the official time, we've got 25 minutes left. So I would probably intend to finish a bit before 9 o'clock. But if anybody has got any further questions to any panel member, please raise your hand, and depending on time, we'll provide the answers.
Great. Question from Roger Hibbins. Roger, I'll take you off if you want to take yourself off mute and ask your question.
Good evening. It's just really a comment on the changes that have happened as we've moved forward to a more national setup. And we have lost a lot of localism in that it's hard to find local umpires. It's hard to organise games now because GMS is so complex or or particularly lacking in any information on it which is of any use at the moment. So I'm still using old emails to actually arrange games with people, because I don't have their up-to-date contacts, because often people only put one contact onto GMS and they've given up. So it's just really a plea if we could somehow go back to more local guidance, so that smaller clubs have some idea where they are in the world at the moment, because it's very hard to find an umpire and it's very hard to organise games at the moment with the lack of information that's available. For example, we used to have very large umpire lists. Well, they seem to have completely disappeared now. I can't find out who's a practicing umpire in the East at all. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point, and they're ones we need to take away and talk about. I definitely think there's limitations of GMS up in there. I think there were some practices previously that weren't very GDPR compliant about what was published, with or without consent around some of those things. So an official, I'm sure your area body would be helpful if you needed help in terms of access to people. Ironically, GMS has allowed us to get more officials registered in one place than they've ever been registered in one place before, but it's now about making the most of that. In terms of what we can do, I think in terms of organising local games and friendlies, with the changes we've been through, it's an area where we need to improve. But again, I think your league would help if you need contacts, or there are other ways we can provide those contacts. But the feedback is heard, and I'll make sure that we're considering it in terms of some of the things we need to move forward with next season.
Okay, Graham.
Okay. Question from Tristan Bell. Tristan, I unmute you if you want to go ahead.
Tristan.
Hey, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, certainly.
Fantastic. Right, my question's about GMS. This seems to be the topic of this evening. So we are quite a small club in United Services in Portsmouth, and I understand completely that we're having a review about the way the structure of the site works and trying to get the most out of the information that's there. My question kind of facilitates around how much we're actually asking of our teams to provide, particularly when it comes to a match day weekend. Now, I understand that it's been put together to try and make a national structure, but we're asking. I've got 2 teams in level 4 where there've been team sheets together asking for goals scored at the time they scored and the management of that goal, whether it was a P flick or a short corner or out in open play. It's a lot of information that we're asking of our team captains, particularly at the lower levels, who also particularly hold other positions within the committee. So it's a lot that we're asking these people to do. Is that information going to be reviewed, of whether that's actually necessary to ask? And if it's worth the additional burden that we're putting on our players, particularly when we've got more and more people doing more and more to try and make hockey happen.
Yeah, I think we're not there in terms of the benefits of GMS yet, and we are working hard on it, and we'll keep seeing those improvements. I think there's a challenge in that the opportunity that comes with good data to make the game more engaging, help clubs and everything else, if we can get there. You know, many leagues recorded scorers in the past, many required the recording of cards, and it depends what area of the country you're in as what happened for you previously. So in some areas of the country there was none of that, in other areas of the country it's completely normal and people have done team sheets and scorers and things for the long run. The real opportunity for us, I think, comes in providing more ways to make the game engaging, better information, to make that an easier experience for people on the match day, and we're not there yet. These are the kind of things that we need to move forward and try and improve, and then review when we've got it functioning effectively, whether it is that burdensome. I think there's a familiarization, and one of the problems when we had 50 odd different leagues across the country was just simply how different things were. And I played in an area where nothing was ever recorded, so I know it feels different. There are plenty of areas of the country where they're very familiar with this and it doesn't feel different. So that's the challenge a bit. But again, nothing that we do won't be without review. But we have to sometimes get far enough implementing things before we decide whether or not we do it for the long run.
Mike,
yeah.
I think I've solved the communication challenge with our colleagues in Nottingham. So I have an email from them. So if I may, Mr. President, on behalf of the Griffiths family, hi everybody, David Griffiths here from Nottingham Hockey Centre, Beeston Hockey Club. Our energy costs at Nottingham Hockey Centre are set to triple when our fixed term tariff ends in September. It's a rather significant number, David. I'll keep it personal to you guys. What are England Hockey doing to keep hockey affordable to all participants and help hockey clubs with these increased costs, in this particular case, energy? And Rich, you and I have talked about this, but if I pass that to you and Nick on behalf of the Griffiths organisation.
Yeah, I mean, there's a sort of undeniable global context which is well outside of our control at the moment. So there's, our powers are limited by some price rises and other things, whether that's fuel or food or particularly electricity in this case. From a facilities perspective, we're trying, we're in contact with various group buying organisations. There's no guarantee they're going to be cheaper, and what we're coming to test that out with a number of clubs. I was discussing it with our facilities contacts only this morning. We're coming to test that out with a number of clubs, but when everybody's domestic bills are going up, it is unavoidable that other bills are going to go up along the way, and I understand the challenge. We're open-minded about ways that people think we can mitigate this, but some of it is unavoidable. I was with a colleague from Spanish hockey last week, and they were having the same challenges, and I think we need collective input on what the solutions would be. We can't fund your electricity bill or your fuel bill, to Ian Harvey's previous comment. And so we just need to try and think creatively whether there are decisions we're making that are increasing that bill, or whether there are partnerships and people we can introduce you to that can try and reduce that bill. I would imagine anybody who runs a business, which there are people around here and people on the call no doubt, are facing the same headache at the moment. Mike and Royston.
Nick, anything to add?
I think the only bit I'd add, and David's been in touch through Royston and Rich already on this, which is helpful, is we can keep pushing the partners, Mike, that we speak to regularly, the Sport Englands and others, and the more times that we do that, the more chance that we have of any further support that we might get from government or other government bodies. So not only those in the group buying stage, but those that potentially could help try and alleviate some of these concerns. But we're certainly taking those on, and we've already started to have those conversations. So yeah, the more information, Mike, the better, really.
Yeah, I'm sure that from David and Graham's view that it's not a great answer, but to be honest, Rich saying that we can't fund your electricity bill is fact. What we can do is try and find other innovative ways to help, but as we speak at the moment, I don't think there is any definitive answer. So,
Mike, the only thing I would add to Nick's comment is, when I was up in Nottingham recently, it was raised with me, and we have raised it with the Minister, with Nigel Huddleston and co. And as Nick knows, this isn't just a hockey issue, this is a societal issue, as you explained, Mike. And I think one of the things we've got to look at is, we don't want facilities in hockey or any sport being mothballed on the basis we can't create a cost-efficient model of actually using them. So it's certainly on Nigel's agenda, I guess I would put. Nick's well aware of that, and we just need to keep lobbying and see. I don't think there's an easy answer though, Mike. That isn't going to provide cash tomorrow, which is the issue. But we'll need to keep lobbying as hard as we can, and obviously the membership need that will do that.
Okay, but Graham, any
Yep. Sanjay Bowery, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Good evening, everyone. Just a quick question. We've just gone through a huge restructuring in terms of how we run hockey. And I just wanted to ask the question, how do you judge, what criteria are you using to say, has it been successful and is it delivering the benefits that you thought it would?
It's a really good question, Sanjay. I think the question is, we will definitely review. It's too early to do that. We work extremely closely with the volunteers who are leading the areas, leading the groups, who are at the cutting edge of everyone's feedback on all what they think about all the changes and everything else, and they're helping us understand, as well as the direct feedback we get from clubs, We, as the season ends and we review this first season, and then as we think about how we move ahead, there'll be a time for a formal review. I just think it's slightly too early to really understand the benefits or otherwise of the changes we've been through. As I said earlier, it's a once in a generational change. It's going to take a little while to settle down. But there absolutely was a commitment to a review by the board when the decision was made.
Rich, if I may just say, when you do your review, I would really encourage you as the board to go high and wide and seek feedback on what people think, rather than just going through the area committees.
Oh yeah, we would at that stage. I'm just saying, in terms of every day and how many people and how much feedback you can take, that's sort of, they're close to people every day, and receiving that feedback. And I would have said, to defend some of the volunteers in the areas, some of them have been on the receiving end of a lot of feedback from the clubs, given the changes. Some of it's quite unpleasant actually to volunteers in our areas from some of the clubs over the course of this year. But it's been a tricky transition period that, you know, I get paid to receive the feedback, so I can accept it. I think in some cases our volunteers have received stuff that would make many people want to give up, to be honest. And I think there's been real resilience in our volunteer base to pursue and support the changes. And Mike may want to come in, but absolutely at the right time we will review high and wide. The timing of which you do that needs to be thought through quite carefully, so we have an assessment of what's gone on.
I think my sort of high-level comment would be that England Hockey didn't unilaterally decide to change the way things were run. We were mandated, the board were mandated by the membership to change what was currently there. They weren't happy with it. We proposed a change, and 86% of the membership voted that change through. So the fact that the membership asked for the change put the ball back into our court. I think then, obviously, with the change as large as it was, clearly there were going to be issues as far as implementation were concerned, and to draw any conclusions at the end of one season in the circumstances that we've had, re-COVID, etc., I think is a little unrealistic. But from my point of view, and definitely from the board's point of view, that review will take place, and it will be done at the highest level and the widest level to ensure that any changes that are done in the future will take into account the experience that everybody's had. So that would be my sixpenneth on that particular issue. It was the membership who asked us to do it. Graham, any final questions?
Tim Forte, if you want to unmute yourself and ask your question.
Tim, please.
Not so much question, Mike. It's just to back on what you've just said and what Rich has been saying. I'm chair of the EHO, so it's just to give Evan a very brief update on how officiating has coped with the change, which has been for us the same as it has been for clubs, coaches and players. It's gone as well as we could hope, given, I'll use the three letters of GMS's issues, and given everything that's been going on with COVID. But the volunteers have been amazing. The processes are getting there. The first season's gone pretty well. We've got over, I think Rich mentioned, just shy of 6,000 members now, over 1,000 people taking appointments, 15,000 appointments made. So we're getting there. It's going to be better consolidation, I think, is the message for next year. Build on what we've got, and we're very positive about it. And we're very grateful to the support, not least of David Elworthy, who's leaving you, obviously. We'll miss him. But on two people who've spoken, the one about development and moving up the pathway, find your area officiating committee, find your development lead there, they'll help you. And about the clubs, small clubs struggling, find at least your club liaison officer and they'll help you. We've got people in place in every area specifically tasked with finding and helping clubs, individuals, etc. Just look them up and find them and they'll help.
Thanks, Tim, for that. And on that positive note, I am going to draw stumps Royston's waving his hand at me, so maybe I'm not drawing stumps.
Mike, no, just not a formal part of the agenda this evening, but in case I don't get the opportunity of saying so, I've been made aware it's our past president, Sue Boddicombe's birthday today, and I just want to let the meeting go without wishing her a happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Sue. On that equally positive note, I'm going to draw stumps. If anybody has got any further questions that they want to ask, please do email the agm@englandhockey.co.uk site. But on that note, I will thank everybody for their attendance. The results of the voting will be received by email tomorrow. Have a very pleasant rest of the evening, and I look forward to seeing people in clubs presenting medals, etc., now that we're in a position to do so. So thanks very much for your attendance, and have a very safe rest of the season and enjoyable rest of the evening. Thank you. Thank you.